What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Poor Man's Garage. Now, unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, we're going to be reduced to cell phone footage for a little while. But nevertheless, we're going to show you today some basic maintenance as well as how to keep your car running good with a couple tips and tricks. Our vehicle of choice today is going to be this 2002 Ford Ranger. Let's get started.
Ugly. I feel the rage and I just can't hold it. It's scratching on the walls, in the closet, in the halls. It comes awake and I can't control it. Hiding under the bed, in my body, in my head. Why won't somebody come and save me from this? Make it end. I feel it deep within, it's just beneath the skin. I must confess that I feel like a monster. I hate what I've become. I must confess that I feel like a monster.
Now, one of the biggest things you'll hear as far as maintaining a vehicle's power and performance is tune-up. Over the time your vehicle has been in use, some of its components have worn out and it has lost the power that they originally put out. As you can see, this is a 4.0 liter single overhead cam 6-cylinder out of a 2002 Ford. What I've done to this for a basic tune-up, the coil still seemed okay, so the coil has not been replaced. But I've replaced spark plug wires going to all 6 cylinders as well as spark plugs. It has a new air filter on it, I flushed some fluids, and I put new fluids in it, and we're getting ready to do an oil change today. Now, as far as this engine goes, this is what's known as a single coil system. There's one coil pack that makes the spark for all 6 cylinders. What this is this pack right here will generate the spark and send each cylinder through the wire that goes to the directed cylinder. Hooking up wires in the wrong position will cause spark to go to the wrong cylinder, so whenever you do spark plug wires, you need to make sure you do them one at a time. That way you cannot confuse where the wires go. The importance of the spark plug wire is a lot more than a lot of people think. Most people have really ratted out an old dirty spark plug wires on their vehicle and it still runs fine, and that's okay. A lot of vehicles, these spark plug wires that are here have holes in them from where they've touched the manifold and they've had burns through them, or they're just old enough that they've dry rotted and cracked. That doesn't seem like a big deal because the wire's still completely intact and there's no cracks, but that's only not a big deal to those who don't know what the importance actually is. Because what happens is you have electricity conducted through these wires. Electricity tries to find the quickest path, and what happens is you have the cracks in here, the electricity will escape through those cracks and try to find another path, which results in not getting all the spark that you need. The importance of the air induction system is simple. This is what's known as an internal combustion engine. Now, what happens inside of this engine is a mixture of oxygen and fuel goes into the combustion chamber, and that's where it's ignited by the spark. Now, the reason that it's so important to not have any restriction or the least restriction possible in the air induction system is because a certain ratio will provide the best amount of power for what the motor can put out. If you have that ratio off, you will have less power and possibly engine damage. Now, to prevent engine damage from an improper air to fuel ratio, if you're lacking air, there's a simple solution. All you need to do is on this model, you'll pop the clips. It's on either side of the airbox. You lift the airbox off of here, and underneath here is where your air filter's at. Now, what happens is you have an induction system that goes from your air filter toward a lot of vehicles. It'll be somewhere near the headlight or somewhere where it can induct clean air. It will shoot up through your air filter and into your piping, into your induction system. As you can somewhat see, the induction system's fairly clean on here, so I know my piping is okay. Now, the filter doesn't look great, but it was recently replaced and could probably use one more replacement here shortly. As you can see, this is where all the filtering happens because all of my dirt stays down in here and does not pass into the induction system. Yes, there's been mice in here, but it's okay. The mice haven't passed the air filter. And now we go underneath the vehicle to explain the importance of the fuel maintenance. Now what this is the fuel filter. It's the same thing as the air filter except for the fuel system. It filters any bad components that may be in your fuel, whether it be dirt that may have dropped into your gas tank or something that has gotten into the lines that shouldn't be there. It filters it through this piece right here that has recently been replaced, and it runs it up to your fuel rails. And as you can see here, this silver pipe right here is the fuel rail for this 4.0. And what happens is your fuel goes from your lines into that silver pipe. And as you can just barely see down here, this thing that has a little bit of blue on it is what's called your fuel injector. This fuel injector feeds off of the fuel that's in the fuel rail, and in this case directly injects it into the combustion chamber. If this was what's known as a port injection motor, it would inject the fuel into the manifold and then be distributed per cylinder. But in this case, the precision of this motor directs the exact amount of fuel we need with the exact amount of air we need right into the combustion chamber. So with our 145,651 mile 4.0 liter V6 in our 2002 Ford, I decided to go with some Castrol Edge high mileage oil. We've always run Castrol in these things, and we've never had a problem with Castrol in these things. That's just what our pick has always been for Ford motors. So we're going to run Castrol Edge high mileage oil. We have our big jug for the initial oil change, and we always get a spare jug because no matter what anybody says, no matter how good a motor runs, you will, no matter what, always burn some amount of oil in a motor. No motor will be high enough precision that you'll never burn an ounce of oil. So I always get an extra quart of oil just in case to make up later in time for what is burned. I went ahead and I went with some STP high mileage oil treatment. It's got stop leak in it. It's supposed to help all of your seals and everything. It's supposed to help with engine noises and smoking, which is again the burning of the oil. And we went with the Fram high mileage filter. This filter is the HM2, and it's the model specifically for this motor. So we're going to go ahead and get this stuff up to the barn, and let's get started. And yes, for those of you who did notice, I felt bad after the first couple sections of video I took at how dirty the motor was. So I took a quick cleaning kit and rag to it. It looked bad on me. I'm supposed to be a mechanic, and this thing looked awful. Still looks awful, but okay, let's get started. Alright, everything's looking good. I got my two shotgun riders, my garage hands with me. I'm gonna go ahead and get in this thing. Why I left the heat on, I don't know. Yes, I need gas, and yes, it has an exhaust leak. Those will be things that will be fixed in the near future. Well, the exhaust leak, at least. The only way to really fix a lack of gas is to purchase it. It's probably the first place we're going after this. Get it up to the barn. We actually just did a customer oil change not very long ago, a day or two ago. So most of our supplies we need are already out. Because we're working with jack stands, we're gonna have a creeper to get under the truck a little bit easier. Oil filter removal tools. We've got a basic socket set with a ratchet somewhere. Our funnel to put the oil back in, our oil drain pan, and that should be the majority of what you need. Oh, there's the ratchet. So let's get to it. So now we're going to go ahead, we're going to chock the wheels. Normally, in any sort of working condition, I would chock the wheels, one in front, one in back. In this case, because we're going to have the vehicle in the air, but only the front in the air, there's not a lot of likelihood of it rolling forward. So I went ahead and I put both chocks behind it. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and get the vehicle up off the air that we can get underneath of it a little bit easier. In this case, we're going to go ahead and use the cross member go ahead and get our positioning on. What we're going to do that I did not grab yet is we're going to put a wood block on there to kind of act like a bushing more or less. That way any damage or impact is taken to the softer piece versus metal. You have the wood in the middle to take any damage that may have occurred by awkward positioning of the shapes, like the, for lack of better words, teeth that are on the jack. So we're going to go ahead and get that block of wood and put it in between. Then we're going to get the car in the air. Now, the reason that I always recommend changing your own oil, not only is it simple and easy, but the big thing about changing your own oil is you don't have to worry about this. Last time the oil was changed in this vehicle, we were in a bit of a pinch. There was already a vehicle in the garage, so we took it to cheap and easy oil change place. There is not a single name or badge on this oil filter. That is the thing that I have always hated, and the reason that I always work on my own vehicles is because I want to know everything about this vehicle. I want to know what's in it. I want to know what's going to come out of it. I always say change your own oil because it's quick, it's simple, it's easy, it's something every starter mechanic can do. Any do-it-yourselfer can do it. This is actually, changing oil is the first thing I ever did to a vehicle. And I've been doing that kind of stuff ever since. So my recommendation has always been change your own oil. That way, of all things, you at least know what's going in your vehicle versus having that question. If I change my own oil, I can go get my high mileage stuff that I want to keep the motor protected. I can go get all my leak stop and everything, and I don't have to worry about not knowing what's there. Alright, so we're underneath the vehicle. We found our oil pan drain plug right here. So we're going to go ahead and match up a socket to it. I already matched up my socket. You want to make sure when you do this that there's absolutely no play in it whatsoever. So we went ahead and we broke it loose. I slapped the ratchet back on there. That way we can get through this process a little bit quicker. So we're going to go ahead and loosen this up. So now we've reached our point where we're definitely going to get flow here in a very short amount of time. So what we're going to do is going to keep pressure on it. We're going to keep pushing upward as much as we can until you can tell that the threads are not unthreading anymore, that you're just holding the oil there. So once you reach that point, I can tell it's there, just release. That keeps your hand as clean as it can possibly be. That's a lot better than it would have been if I wouldn't have done that. It would have just poured all over my hand. So the next step, now that we got the oil still at a steady drop, it should be good to close anytime, but I'm just going to let as much of the old dirty oil out as I can. But the next thing we have to do is get the oil filter off. I went ahead and broke it loose as well. The removal tools that I have, obviously they're made to wrench around it, and there's no room around it to wrench with, so I went ahead and I took these just to move it enough to break it loose. I clamped it tight enough that it didn't really damage the old filter. Not that the old filter would really matter if it was damaged or not, but just to make sure I didn't disrupt anything, I just put it on there snug and broke it loose. And then I went ahead and at this point I can just hand screw it off. Now you're going to get another load of oil for this one. There it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust my pan just enough. I'm actually just going to go ahead and let that drain itself. And then when that's low, I can prevent any more of this. So now, both the oil pan plug and the oil filter itself are to a steady drop. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do like I did with the oil pan plug. I'm going to keep upward pressure on this, that way it doesn't drop, and that way any oil will sort of kind of retain itself up there. It's off of there. There's that little bit of oil there, which again could have been so much worse if I hadn't done that. And now we're going to put the new one on. Alright, so we've got our new filter. What you want to do is take some of your oil and you want to wipe it around this ring right here. That will give this kind of a wet seal, and it will help it bite a little bit better and prevent leaks no matter how hard or how tight you torque it down. So we're going to go ahead and put the new filter back on. I'm going to go ahead and get it hand tight as you can. Now, an oil filter doesn't need to be super tight because that's what makes it hard to get back off. So generally, granted I have a little bit of extra strength versus small people. I'm a big guy, but I usually just put it on a firm hand tight. That way it's easy to get off next time, but you'll still have a good seal. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead. We're going to let the vehicle back down. Let it down nice and slow. Yes, the jack stand likes to make a lot of noise. You're on the ground. Go ahead and let her all the way down. Back your jack out. I took the liberty of already popping the hood. Oil cap off. Oil. Funnel. And we go ahead and insert the oil. Now, the simple way to see how much oil your engine takes if you don't know is we took our 5-quart jug. We dumped the majority of it already in the motor. And what we're going to do, set this out of the way. Why that was so difficult. We're going to go ahead, wipe down our dipstick, put it back in, check it. We've got 2 marks on our dipstick. Different manufacturers do it different ways. Some of them put bumps, some of them put holes. In this case, Ford put holes. Your hole toward the bottom of the dipstick is your add mark, which means you need more. Your hole toward the top means you're full, which means don't pass this point. Right now, we're probably about 1/8 of an inch below full. So we're actually good where we're at. So we're going to slip our dipstick right back in there. We're going to check for leaks and we're going to call it quits. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our bottle of oil treatment and just put it right in. We're going to let that drain out and then we should be good to go. Now that we've got everything done, we're going to go ahead, fire it back up. Back into the motor for a little while, and just we're going to take it out and see how it runs, double check everything's alright, and we just go. Alright, so we showed you a couple different ways you can maintain your motor a little bit better. Showed you a couple tips and tricks of how to get that little bit of extra power back out of it that it had when you first got it. Now next week we're going to show you how to seafoam a motor and a couple different things you can put in the motor to benefit it. The oil's changed, all is well, and she's back to purring like a kitten. Thanks for watching, you guys, and I hope to see you all next week. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and let the vehicle back now.
I need to be able to